Hi guys, it's Pascal from ArtOfDrumming and I'd like to welcome you to our drum tuning crash course. In this video I'm going to show you my method of tuning a snare drum. This video is the first of our three-part video series on drum tuning, where we go through each step it takes to tune a snare drum, a bass drum and toms for a great all-around sound. This being the first video of the series, we're going to focus on the snare drum. Feel free to copy what I'm about to do step by step. To get started, I suggest we take a listen to a few different snare drum sounds from famous songs we recreated here at ArtOfDrumming to give you an overview of how different snare drums can sound. While all of these snares sound different, there are some steps that are always the same no matter which snare I tune and how it's gonna sound in the end. Let's strip down this snare now and start from scratch, and I'll take you through the process. As you can see, here we have the snare shell, the hoops with tension rods, the wires and two fresh heads. Before installing the heads, make sure that the bearing edge of your drum as well as the contact area of the head is clean. Next, lay the head flat onto the drum and make sure it isn't off in any direction. Now let's install the hoop. To do that, lay it on the head and line up the tension rods with the lugs. Then lower them down just enough to where they make contact with the hoop. Stop here for now, we'll add tension when all the tension rods are lowered down. For that, I personally like to use a drum key with a little rubber grip on top, like this one from Reso. For tuning, some people like to go in a circle, but I find it easier to apply an even amount of force all the way around by going in a star pattern. That will be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I go around the drum like this twice. First, I only turn the rods a little bit, maybe half a turn, and then I turn them until I physically can't anymore, using my fingers on the rubber grip until they slip. This acts like a mechanical torque wrench and applies the same amount of force to every tension rod. Then I press my fingers in the middle of the head and look for wrinkles. You might see some spots with less tension, especially since some drums can be oversized. In that case, just tune up the rods around the wrinkles until they are gone. So for instance, if there was a wrinkle here, I would turn up this tension rod until it's gone. From there, I continue to tune up the drum. I go up at around half a turn at a time, but pay more attention to the resistance I get from the tension rod than making sure that I'm tuning exactly the equal amount of turns. Once I get to a pitch in about this range, I press the center of the head in order for it to release any stiction on the bearing edge. This stiction is also why it's generally better to tune up than down. With that being done, now is where the actual tuning begins. Tap next to each tension rod, listen to the pitches and bring up the lower ones with quarter to half turns. Here is what I'm hearing. That one's slightly lower. This is actually quite in tune already, so I'm just gonna bring this one up. This one is also slightly lower. And now I'm also hearing that these two are lower. When listening to the pitches, it can be confusing in terms of which one exactly to listen to. On a snare, you should be able to hear 3 different pitches. The tuning of the top head, which we just listened to. Then there is also the overtone, which is always the same even if the head is not in tune. And this is not helpful for tuning. In this case we have And lastly, there is the fundamental, which is a combination of all of the lugs and not helping for tuning either. Repeat this process of bringing up the lower tension rods until the drum head is in tune with itself and all of the pitches match. This takes some practice, but anybody can learn it. Here's my recommendation for a great all-around snare batter head tuning on a 14-inch snare. Next, let's fit the Reso head. The same steps apply, except I don't press or stretch the head. It's so thin that it would break. For snare Reso heads, you can also check the distance between the hoop and the bearing edge, right there, to make sure that it's level. A snare drum Reso head for me doesn't have to be perfectly in tune, the reason being that the snare drum always has what's called a snare bed on the bottom. This recess of the bearing edge underneath the wires ensures correct snare wire response. Consequently, the 4 tension rods around the snare bed are gonna have less tension by nature, due to the greater distance between the hoop and the bearing edge of the drum. That's why on snare Reso heads, I match the pitches of all of the tension rods, except for those 4. Those 4 are typically lower, but should have the same pitch across the 4 of them as well. Here's the final tension of the head, which is almost always the same for everything I do. Those 4 are lower, these 6 are higher. I recommend using this as a starting point. A lower snare Reso head will lower the fundamental pitch of the drum and may create some sluggish snare wire response, while a head that's too cranked up will remove body and promote overtones, as well as making the wires overly responsive. Speaking of which, installing the wires can be fiddly, but shouldn't be too hard if you follow these steps. First, put in the ropes or plastic strips that hold the wires on. Then lay the wires on the Reso head, centered on the head. Now attach the rope or the plastic strips to the butt plate while keeping the snare wires centered on the head when the rope is under tension, or the plastic is under tension. Before attaching the rope or the plastic strips to the throw-off, make sure that the fine-tuning adjustment of your snare wires is set in the middle position for good adjustability later on, no matter if it's on the throw-off side or on the butt plate side. Next, hold the throw-off in a halfway off position and then attach the tensioned plastic strip or rope to make sure that the adjustment is not going to be too tight or too loose later on. Before hitting the drum, it can be helpful to recheck the tuning of the batter head, as the two heads are now talking to each other and resonating together. This can lead to the tuning being slightly off, although it was fine earlier on. With that all done, let's check out the result. We hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any further questions, stick them in the comments. Be sure to check out our bass drum and tom tuning crash course videos too, and subscribe and ring the bell for more helpful tutorials. See you next time.